Hello, how's everyone doing?
Great.
Hey, my name is Matthew. I am the accessibility lead at a little agency called Back to Studio. And what that means is when we build a site, I just make sure that it's as easy to use for everyone, that's easy to use for everyone. I am a member of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I'm currently studying to take a couple of their certifications, but I think if you guys are is everyone here a developer? Yeah. I think most of the research I do is probably related to a project I'm working on. So I don't think of myself so much as an expert yet, more as an advocate or ally. And I think that's what we should all think of ourselves as, hopefully. So I started doing this 10 years ago, and this was my phone, and this was its gigantic cord. And responsive design was something people were talking about, but it was kind of a nice to have. It wasn't, the iPad was pretty fresh and nothing looked great on it. And when I got a design, it was usually just desktop. And if I got a mobile design, it was totally different design. The client usually referred to it as the mobile version of their site. And they'd even have those stupid m. domains, and the breakpoint really just meant you switch from one design to the other. It was not responsive. So it was just an afterthought, is the point. But less than a year later, the agency I was working for said that we are a responsive design agency. We are a mobile-first agency, that if we're sitting down with a client and doing discovery and going through early steps, if they didn't bring up mobile, we brought up mobile. And if they said, you know what, I don't think our clients really need mobile, we'd be as nice as possible and say, yeah, they do. Because the year before, it was 18% of traffic was going to be on a mobile phone, and then by the next year it was 30, and then it went up 10% every year until it got to where it is now at around beginning of 2017. So depending on what country you're in, at any given moment, your website's being accessed somewhere between 60 and 70% by a mobile device. So these are some other devices that are not as familiar as tablets and phones, but they are equally important, and they're thankfully getting more press and becoming more important. They only represent probably about 1% to 2%, if that, of the internet, but they're important. It's something that those same conversations we were having with clients, or I was having with clients, probably you too, about mobile. If they say, I don't think our users need mobile, if they're not saying, if they say something like, I don't need my site to be accessible, you need to tell them, or we need to be telling them, advocating and saying, yeah, you really do. So I'm arguing to think first philosophically about building sites from the get-go with these sort of devices in mind. All right, there's two big reasons this is coming up a lot, and the first one I hate because it's cynical and misses the point. It's people are getting sued. You're hearing from clients maybe that have a pretty high-profile site, and they're getting sued, and they don't want to get sued, so they're wanting their sites to be accessible. I think it's led to a lot of not so great solutions, but that's like a whole other conversation. Second reason is a little better. It's my second favorite reason. Everybody knows this picture. The desktop and mobile looks good, and the client's happy is the quality, and everyone else is on their own. Equity is when you have an accessibility audit and somebody says, well, this menu doesn't work at all for somebody with a screen reader. But I think the ultimate goal should be, like responsive design, that we're building one site that works the same for everybody. And I have a couple of anecdotes because that's my comfort zone. I love telling anecdotes. I cook a lot, and I love cooking for my friends. And something that I've started thinking about lately, because I wasn't thinking about it before, is trying to make a meal, if I know somebody has a dietary restriction, that's just good for everybody from the get-go. Because say you have like a Friendsgiving and you've already planned out your whole meal, and then you ask, does anyone have any dietary restrictions? And somebody says, oh yeah, I'm bringing my girlfriend and she's vegan. And it's so the vegan shows up and there's a turkey she can't eat. And you've got one bowl of mashed potatoes that's got like 6 sticks of butter in it and cream and everything but everything. And the vegan mashed potatoes, which are like salt and pepper and maybe a little olive oil. And that's like not a great thing to do as a host. You're basically saying you're not as important as us. So, now I'm the guy shooting for, well, I'm going to roast a whole head of garlic. I'm going to get some cashew cream. I'm going to make some mind-blowing mashed potatoes that are also vegan. And that's leads me to my third and favorite reason. It's a better solution a lot of the time. So this little thing on the screen is a touch-sensitive sink. And my partner's mother has some serious mobility issues. And they redid their kitchen a couple years ago, and they put one of these in. And we visited it, and I hated it because I was used to using it in a certain way, and I'd reach over and think I was turning it on, but I was turning it off. I'd move it out of the way so I could do something in the sink and accidentally turn it on and flood the counter. It was not cool. I was like, we don't need to improve on faucets. There's just 2 little things, and that's it. Why are we doing this? And then a couple days later, I was making some roasted potatoes, and they were all cut up. And come on in. I was making some roasted potatoes, and I was tossing them in a bowl with olive oil. And I turned around with oily hands, because this happens all the time. Look, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most brilliant thing in the world. And I washed my hands. And so I think that just because we're used to doing things in a certain way doesn't mean that they're the best way. It's just what we're used to, and that when we're forced to come up with a different solution, it's usually, or often enough, it's better than the one that was there. So, mega menus. How many people love mega menus? I don't think anyone, but everybody seems to want them, and they are a nightmare for people using assistive devices. Most of them are only partially accessible, and I would say a sizable minority of them are just totally useless. They don't work. I was going to show you Rolling Stone, which has a shockingly bad mega menu that you can't tab into, you can't arrow key into, you can't escape out of. It's pretty amazing. And Forbes has a pop-up for first-time visitors that I wasn't able to get out of with a keyboard. You were just stuck in their pop-up. And USA Today has a good one. It's a little too much, in my opinion. You can tab. There's some arrow key availability. The escape key works. That's great. But it's a little much. And IRS.gov is like my favorite. It's just enough, and you get the impression that everything on this mega menu was necessary. So, I'm not saying all mega menus are bad, I guess is what I'm getting to. But a lot of them I think are unnecessary. And when I'm talking to clients and they just want one for the sake of wanting one, I try to have that conversation where I'm like, well, what do you need this for, and what are you hoping to get out of this? And at least talk them back a little from the more extravagant ones, because they're just a nightmare. Next thing I would talk about is document flow, and I'm going to pick on Rolling Stone again. I guess I knew the internet was not going to work. I don't know if anyone sees any problems in this cover page off the bat. You would have just seen that clicking on that opens a mega menu that you can't do anything with on a keyboard. But there's another problem. And I see this all the time, and I build this all the time. And I thought that I will give you a screen reader's view of the world, and you can either read along with the next few slides in text, or you can not look at all and just hear me read it to you and get the experience. So, first bit of information I'm going to give you is a date. July 1st, 1898. I don't really expect that to mean anything to anyone. Next thing, photo of men in uniform. And then the next thing, if you didn't get that, you got something really helpful, that IMG 495, WT, TZ, et cetera, et cetera. Third thing, Spanish-American War. It's a topic, it's great. And then finally, you got a title that, had it been the first thing you presented to the reader and to the screen reader, the other things would have made sense. So I know that we've built stuff like this, where first of all, you got a sidebar here that's more important than their lead story if you're tabbing through it. And the first thing you're reading on this sidebar is miffed. Thanks, that's real helpful. And then you get to a title. Same thing with Lisa Marie. Hopefully, they probably have a good alt tag for this, so you know it's Lisa Marie Presley. And then this means something. But you can see the problems. Like, without the context of the visual you're getting, this is a very confusing site. So here's another offender. Got a photo on a smaller blog, so there's no way that has a good alt tag. And then a date, and then an author nobody's heard of, and then finally, oh good, chickpea recipes. Sorry to get, this is a Cup of Joe, if anyone knows. It's a good website, I don't mean to make fun of it. Okay, so there are some solutions for stuff like this. Most theme frameworks, WordPress itself, I'm guessing Drupal too, have screen reader text as a class built in. It puts an absolutely positioned title where it needs to be in the document flow so that the person coming in gets to read about Teddy Roosevelt before the rest of us. And this is not display none, and this is not visibility hidden, because that hides it from a screen reader too. And so to remove redundancy, when you get down to that designer's dream of having the title 16th in the flow of the document, put ARIA hidden true so that the person that got it first doesn't have to read it a second time and get confused. Solution two, do we really need this? The nice version of that conversation with the clients. Like, do you really need to have this miffed first? Can we put the title first? Like, and it still be beautiful and wonderful and everything you imagine. If we're going to have photos first, we do have some things we can do. Alt tags. It's really hard to get clients to use these, but they're super important. They make images have some sort of meaning to people who can't see them. And something you can't get addicted, or I don't think we should get addicted, and I hate it when I'm looking at a design and realizing, wow, this one element has 4 different applications of screen reader text. I think that's something where I wish I was involved earlier, and you could have said, I think we need a different solution, because we're basically building 2 different sites. All right. Another thing that really goes off the rails with designs that we don't ever really think about, because I never really thought about it, is fonts, size, contrast, and color. I get a lot of these little tiny all caps things that look really nice, but you don't even have to be visually disabled. You could just have, you could have early cataracts or glaucoma or wear Coke bottles since you were 15 years old, and this is a problem. So I feel like I'm preaching. Am I getting preachy? I don't want to be preachy. Like, I am the first to say, like, if I was showing slides of all my themes and all of my code, everything that I'm complaining about, we would find, and I would be beet red and apologetic, and so I don't want to be preachy. But it is, we're in a really unique position to be changing this. All right, semantics. This I know is in all of my themes, and I'm ashamed, like I probably did this yesterday. Divs are so easy, they always work, and for a screen reader and some assistive devices like speech-to-text things, it doesn't mean anything. A div is the most generic thing you can put on a page. So instead, we need to be more specific and know that they seem arbitrary, but to a screen reader, these are really important. This is like giving super specific and vital information to assistive devices. So every page we build needs a main. I don't understand why, but I just know it's true now. And it's only one main. Same thing with an H1, so that the screen reader knows what the page is about. These are kind of obvious. If it's a sidebar, put in a side. If it's a whole, a section. These last three deserve some special attention. I can't begin to count how many of these I've made. A button that just says click or learn or see more it's without context. It means absolutely nothing it doesn't mean nothing. You can guess, I'm reading this article, or this article is being read to me, and I click through, and all the screen reader can tell me is, click here, and you have no idea where you're going. So the workaround for this, because we still need CTAs, is that terrible but needed screen reader text, where click here to read more about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm the first to say I really hate that table markup still exists. It's the vestigial tale of HTML. But we got to use it. If it looks like a table, I learned this one the hard way. I built a site for higher ed, and it required that it had a 5-column, beautiful table that scrolled perfectly, and then on mobile, the headings moved to the top of their own list, and I built this thing, and it was all divs, and the client loved it because it looked and worked great, and I loved it and was taking a bow and a victory lap, and everybody loved it, and then the accessibility auditor got it because it's higher ed. And I had to tear it down to the studs. This guy ripped me a new one, rightfully. He's like, I don't even know what this is. And this guy, he was using a screen reader because he had to. And he was auditing the site and wrote code faster and better than me, and was saying, look, this doesn't mean anything. He demonstrated for me on a call. And it's just one more thing that we're doing and maybe taking for granted, and making things kind of not miserable. The thing about, I remember this guy said the thing about the internet was that it was so life-changing for him, because so many things were available to him for the first time. And it's like getting somebody out of the desert into an oasis and just keeping them 5 feet away from water at all the time. So, yeah. All right, I do this too when it's easier. The old divs or paragraph tags. Basically, what this guy told me and what I've read and through my research is that whatever something looks like, it has to be coded that way, no matter if it's easier to do something else. So if you have, this is going to look the same on the page no matter what, but a screen reader is going to be able to tell these are organized together. These are a group of things, and this is just going to be kind of random. Forms too. One of these is really bad and one of these is really good, and I can tell you it's this one that's bad, and I've built way more of these than these. Designers hate labels, and they love well-styled forms with placeholder text that doesn't mean anything to most screen readers. So somebody will tab into this, and all of the labels are hidden, and it won't mean anything to them. they'll know that there's fields there, but they won't be getting any information back. So it's as good as it's not there for them. So, just to wrap up before I take any questions I might be able to answer, I still really feel like I'm preaching. We're really in a unique position as designers and developers that, like, there's really, who else is going to do this? The client, unless they're specifically coming in and asking about accessibility, are not going to come in and insist on it. And it's like we're educators. We're telling people that they need to be doing this. And all of these things that I've talked about, they're like the lowest hanging fruit. And the thing that I'm always humbled by is whenever I get audited and I'm thinking I'm going to pass this with flying colors, something's always found. And it's just, I want to be looking more so that I'm catching things before someone else is. So that is my speech. Are there any questions? I know I flew through that. Public speaking's not my thing, if you can tell. Yeah.
It's not actually a question. I think one of the problems way back, as I totally get you, is that there wasn't any guidance on how to make things accessible. I work for the federal government, and now we have WCAG and WAI, and it tells you exactly why, like alt tag.
Yeah.
You can't just put the name of the image there. Now you have these things, and I think that was actually the problem. We know that there was a problem, but I don't know. Like, I don't know how to fix it for somebody who has limited vision or uses a screen reader. That's why I think it's getting better.
Yeah, it's definitely getting better, I'm glad I'm hearing more and more about it. It's just, I think my motivation is more. I think every year a developer looks back and thinks about their code from a year ago, and it's like, oh my god. But this is the first time I've felt like kind of a not so great person about it. Of like, man, I've been building sites that like a couple million people can't access at all.
Just to touch on your earlier point of your least favorite reason to do this being legal.
Yeah.
Because at least from my understanding of other forms of sort of legally required accessibility, like the building we're sitting in right now, a lot of times whatever that requirement is just the bare minimum. And so, making sure, you reach the legal requirement, but a lot of times that doesn't really actually help these people. So making sure that you can, I appreciate that it's more about how do we find ways that these people can actually use it, because they deserve to be able to use these websites as well is a good way to approach it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the project I was on with where the guy made me redo my whole beautiful table, I spent weeks with him on the mega menu, and it finally got to a point where it was passing an audit, but it felt like a consolation prize, because I would try to use this with a screen reader, because they're built into a lot of computers. And I wouldn't get very far before I'd have to look and restart, and which is not an option for people that need these things. And it's humbling, but it's also it's a challenge. I've built probably 6 different mega menus since then. I'm in version 6, and I'm still not really happy with it, even though all 6 pass reviews. They just feel like the crappy mashed potatoes to me, or the slightly better mashed potatoes to me.
Is there any alternative to the mega menu? How do you shift away from that into something different?
I built a couple sites for specifically for schools that taught the blind, and they used a tiered approach where it was almost like tabs. They had 2 parallel running menus, and so, which is a little easier to navigate with a keyboard. They're not all horrible. It's just The mistake I made a lot, and that I think is made a lot, is if a top level menu item doesn't have a link, that by itself is confusing. And a lot of times, when the top level item does have a link, our triggering mechanism is hovering. So, like if you're tabbing through that, you can't get to the rest of the menu because there's no hover for the screen reader and there's no trigger. So, what I've been doing, or she mentioned WAG. WAG will say that there should be a button, a dedicated button for anything with a submenu, so that you can you tab into the. I wish I had internet because there's some good stuff to look at. The irs.gov site is great. The button identifies all the correct ARIA labels and ARIA. Did everybody know what the ARIA labels? ARIA expanded, ARIA pop up. They're just more things that are giving the assistive devices information. And I lost my train of thought there. Yeah.
So you've talked a bit about you get audits on certain work that you do, which sounds very reactive. Like, what are the proactive things that you do while you're developing to try to work to the spec or work to the assistive devices?
I try to go through things with my screen reader still to this day. I try to use my keyboard with one hand I think a site you should be able to get to a site with one finger, basically, because there are a lot of people using it with assistive devices where mouth to touch or speech to touch. So I don't know if I have any one answer for that. It's more like every time I build anything now, I'm looking at it and going, okay, I'm the nag, with my own projects and my team's projects of that looks great, but that's not accessible. That's total, so it's more of just spreading the mindset, but so that you can always be thinking about it. Because that's my ultimate goal. I would love, my greatest mic drop moment would be submitting a site for an audit that comes back with nothing. And I'd be like, yes, I can retire now, thank you. It'll never happen, but I think it's just a mindset. I compared it to mobile design because I remember designing for desktop and centering things and how it was a real adjustment to being I still don't use my phone very much. I need a big screen. I'm not great in the eyesight department either. So I think it's changing your mentality and going, I need to do, with everything I'm doing, you need to do it so that it works one finger.
Do you have any tips on websites that load parts with Ajax? So you've got bits of HTML popping in later, updating the page for people who are not navigating visually.
No, I don't think I've run into that problem, but okay. I'll be doing some research on that now.
I'd say please let me know, but how would you?
Yeah, well, I can get you. Do you have a card? I'll give you my card, and you can get back to me. Yeah, I mean, this answers his question of proactively, if this is happening, then this is a problem, and so before it makes it to an audit and somebody's asking me to fix it, it'd be great if they never even knew it was a problem. Thanks. That's a good question. Yes.
I know you can't answer this question because you can't talk for bosses, but when you're doing agile development and you have a big huge team, testing and accessibility are the ones that maybe we might be able to do that.
Yeah.
And but I think that maybe being cognizant of that and the Chinese water torture where you just keep nagging about it might work. But I know that for us it's this needs to happen and we'll go back and fix it. No, we'll never go back and fix it.
Yeah. I think I'm lucky with our bosses care about this. I mean, they're the ones, I was talking about it and they were you should look into some certifications. You should, but if I was on a team where that wasn't happening, I think it is the Chinese water torturers. I do it with our clients when I feel like it's not even my place. I mean, I keep my mouth shut on most things, but if a design rolls through and everyone's ecstatic about it, and I see some real problems, I'm like, you know, just before this becomes a problem, this looks great, but this would be maddening to use with an assistive device. I don't know if that even comes close to your question,
You
but
know, it's fine. I was actually, what I was thinking was that maybe when we do demos or prototypes, that one of the things that we add is assistive device so that the stakeholder, because that's the person, right?
right.
And then we can see, and then maybe, because I think one of those sessions, he said, close your eyes.
Yeah.
So you tell the stakeholder, close your eyes and pretend that you can't actually even see the screen. I think that would bring it home because you can't relate if you don't have the disability, right?
Yeah.
You think you can do it, but you can't really
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, it was a real eye opener. That one audit where I was spending a whole lot of time. I didn't even know this auditor was blind and working with all assistive devices. And I thought, why is this guy busting my balls? Like, why am I spending like 50 hours on a menu? And then when I found all that out, and he's describing to me how he's coding, and like I was inspired, but also like kind of shamed. Like, you know, this should be on